State spending up 43% since Governor J.B. Pritzker took office. Now he's saying because of the Trump administration, they need 4% cuts. But what is really going on here? We've got an investigative team on the job, and they're looking into those numbers. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Wake up with us each and every weekday morning here to get the latest of what's going on. But go to thecentersquare.com where you can get the latest headlines in your inbox. Again, click newsletter, and you'll be able to wake up with those headlines in your inbox, and you'll see the headlines like Pritzker looks for 4% efficiencies after increasing spending 43% since 2019. And we'll get right into this. I'm Greg Bishop, editor at thecentersquare.com, and we have a investigative unit at the Center Square led by Art Kane, and Jared Strong is working to delve through numbers. And I chatted with Jared over the past week and 2 weeks looking at data, getting reaction from legislators, and it's pretty fascinating when you really get all of the data that's in front of you, spreadsheets of tons of spending. We're talking tens of billions of dollars, and just how much Illinois has increased spending. Well, Jared sat down with Art, and you can watch this entire video on our YouTube channel here with the Center Square to hear about Illinois' spending and how much it's increased under the Pritzker administration. Here's Jared and Art discussing a little bit about the state budget.
Illinois has had budget problems for decades. Deficit spending was the norm for more than 20 years until relatively recently. And lawmakers approve that deficit spending, even though it's barred by the state constitution, by underfunding the state's pension system, not paying bills, and borrowing money. And now the pension fund is about $100 billion short. So in the past decade or so, we've had this push and pull around whether to increase or cut the budget and whether to increase or cut taxes. There was a years-long budget impasse when former Republican Governor Bruce Rauner was governor. He wanted to cut spending rather than raise taxes. But under J.B. Pritzker, discretionary spending has increased about 43%. Or $16 billion, like he said, since he took office in 2019.
$16 billion increased spending, and that's grows even more when you look at how much federal tax dollars there have been coming to Illinois, especially during COVID-19. And we'll touch on that in a moment. But Jared continued with some of his analysis of looking at all the documentation of spending records.
Well, we don't have one directly from the governor's office, which declined our request for interviews. But essentially, lawmakers are making the case and the governor's making the case that certain areas have been underfunded over time.
And one of those areas, education, and you've got the school funding formula that changed back in 2017, and we've seen an increase of more than $3 billion for K through 12 education over the years, and that's a lot of money now coming from the states. But is it alleviating local property taxes? Again, these are some of the minutia details that we get down to, because local property taxes aren't part of the state budget. That's local governments, school districts, city governments, municipal governments, village governments, townships, library districts, community college districts. Look at your property tax bill, and it's probably got 6, 7, or 8 different taxing bodies on it. A mosquito abatement district. I mean, you just look through that list, and it's got a whole bunch of different line items that you're paying for with your property taxes. But when you increase the state funding from the state coffers going to local property taxes, again, I'm going way off on a tangent here about property taxes, but it's a major driver of people saying they're looking for other places to live. It impacts business, it impacts farming, it impacts a whole host of places. So back to the state budget in general. Earlier this week, we had Governor J.B. Pritzker. And again, this is after a report from Jared and the team with the Center Square, delving into the numbers, showing 43% increase in spending from the Pritzker administration. That story was published Monday. Tuesday, not saying it's directly related, but interesting timing that the governor puts out an announcement that he's looking for 4% efficiencies in state agencies. We heard this yesterday with Tony McCombie, but I wanted to share it again. The House Minority Leader for the Republicans, and she said that the governor's EO is just meant for a press pop.
This EO talks about the SNAP changes. Well, look at your own self. His own error rate since 2017 has gone up from 5.73 to 11.56%. If he could go back down below that 6%, this is no anticipated cost to the state of Illinois. So
and she goes on from there, talks about the spending on illegal immigrants, the spending on pork projects for Democratic members. But State Representative LaShawn Ford, a Democrat out of Chicago, he said that, listen, I mean, the state might actually have to be spending more than what it is now to make up for lost federal dollars.
We had to spend the money to help get us out of COVID.
And he went on to talk about how he believes Illinois did a good job spending that flux of money during COVID.
We had to spend the money to help get us out of COVID. And I believe that Illinois did a fine job of making sure that we fought back and recovered from COVID. And the money had a timetable on it anyway. So we had to spend the money or we would have lost it. And so we did what we needed to do. We could have spent the money probably better in hard hit communities, but there was no banking the money. We had to actually spend the money or lose it.
So the idea of the COVID dollars, the flood of money, I mean, it was billions of dollars that came to the state of Illinois, and it increased spending during the pandemic in Illinois. But a lot of criticism about were there new programs that were created that need to be sustained, or should those monies have only been used for one-time programs and such? And then you look at the amount of fraud with the Paycheck Protection Program, with the unemployment funds that the state was facilitating, and so on. A lot of fraud stories out there, and I think that we're going to continue to see those fraud stories. But Ford said that, you know, we might have to be spending more state money because the federal government's policies of trying to find waste, fraud, and abuse and clean things up and not spend as much money on these programs. But he also said that if the state's going to spend more money, he warns against increasing taxes on people.
We have to budget for results. It's with inflation at the rate that it's going, and the cost of child care, the cost of going to college, I mean, just all the cost of living expenses, utilities, you name it. It's hard to think that we can levy new taxes on the working class people and think that there's not going to be consequences behind it.
So Ford recognizes that Illinois already facing a lot of tax increases. I mean, just this past year, the state's Democrats voted to increase taxes again on tobacco, vaping products, sports betting, companies getting different types of tax schemes. So there's a lot of different revenue streams they're creating and adding on to that already adds on to Illinois' among the highest taxing rates in the country. House Minority Leader Tony McCombie says Democrats need to start listening to Republicans who have for years been saying lower taxes, lower business costs, lower regulations on businesses, bring down the cost of workers' comp, and a whole host of issues, including working on lowering property taxes. Here's McCombie.
They've never, in the 3 years that I've been leader, had serious conversations or any conversations about our ideas of how we could structurally reform Illinois to actually grow our state instead of killing it.
So what's going to happen? The next budget year begins July 1st of 2026. So they'll get into the nitty-gritty details of the next budget early next year and all the way into May. But what about the current budget? Because the governor says that he's looking for those 4% efficiencies in the current budget, and it may have to be more in future years. But again, the state's increased spending 43% in the past 7 years. Your tax dollars. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. We'll watch this as it continues to unfold and impact you here in the state of Illinois, the land of Lincoln. This is the Center Square and Illinois in Focus Daily.